Hello everybody, I'm Dan Murrell here with a rare double movie review here on the channel because it is a busy Memorial Day weekend, and quite frankly because I want to get my Andor review out tomorrow and then my recap of the Cannes Film Festival out on Sunday. So not much real estate, but that's okay because these two movies, Lilo and Stitch and Friendship, actually are kind of thematically tied. One's about family, one's about friends. Listen, these two movies aren't the same at all, but you do what you can here on the channel. So let's talk about two movies that are in wide release right now, and we will start with the movie that is sure to be number one at the Memorial Day weekend box office, Lilo and Stitch, which is the latest live-action Disney remake, this time of the beloved 2002 animated movie, making it the most recent film to be brought to live action by Disney. Lilo and Stitch has had an interesting journey. Back in 2002 when it came out, it made just a little bit more than the movie Dinosaur, which came out in the year 2000, but over the years it has proved to be incredibly popular, not only with the generation of kids and young adults when it came out, but with a whole new generation. And I think a great sign of that is that at yesterday's screening of the movie at my local theater, which was packed, which you don't see usually on Thursday afternoons, there was a group of kids in the row ahead of me that were all wearing the Stitch hats with the ears. And then directly behind me, there were two full-grown adults, no kids in sight, also wearing Stitch hats. It's this cross-generational appeal that I think has the movie poised to do so well this weekend. Dean Fleischer Camp, whose previous film was the frankly delightful and Oscar-nominated Marcel the Shell with Shoes On, tackles this remake, which was reportedly originally meant for Disney Plus before being shifted to theatrical. Similar to Moana 2, I think that Disney is going to find several hundred million reasons why this was the right call. Maya Kealoha, in her acting debut, takes on the role of Lilo, with Chris Sanders, the original voice of Stitch and the original movie's co-director and co-writer, returning to voice his now CGI creation. As in the original, Stitch crash lands in Hawaii after being exiled by the Galactic Federation as being too powerful and too chaotic. There he meets a young girl named Lilo, who adopts him as her pet, and the two of them evade the aliens hunting Stitch, as well as the CIA, while also trying to keep Lilo's family together so that she can stay with her sister, Nani. Now, the previous Disney live-action remakes have all been of animated movies that I was very familiar with, whereas this one is a little bit different. It came out in 2002. I was in college, so I didn't grow up with this movie, and I honestly probably haven't seen it more than once or twice. So I am as close to a fresh audience as you can get without having actually not seen the movie. So a lot of the changes that were made probably don't jump out to me in the way that they do for people that grew up with this movie. For example, I wasn't really bothered by Pleakley and Jamba becoming mostly humans in disguise, played by Billy Magnuson and Zach Galifianakis, nor did it really bother me that Captain Gantu isn't in the movie because I don't really remember who he was, and the plot changes don't matter as much when you really don't remember much of the original plot either. My point is that my POV is different on this movie than a lot of people, in the same way that a lot of people approach the remakes of Pinocchio or Lady and the Tramp differently because they didn't necessarily grow up with those movies while I watched them all the time when I was a kid. The success of Lilo and Stitch largely rides on whether Stitch is cute or not, and I have to say that he is. He has big eyes, he causes lots of chaos, he speaks gibberish, and he's basically designed to appeal to a young audience. In other words, Stitch is a minion, perhaps the proto-minion. But I don't share the same loathing for Stitch as I do the Minions for a very specific reason, which is that Stitch is also a character in this movie and in the original. He learns, he grows, he's part of some kind of meaningful story, and that's why I think that Stitch is an acceptable minion, which are two words that I have never joined together before. While some of the plot details may differ, this is still a story about family and belonging, the ties that bind us all together, which makes it largely universal. Yes, kids are going to eat this movie up, but it also has something of value for the adult audience. It's one of the reasons why the original has endured for so long, and it's proof that yes, you can make a movie that's aimed for children that adults can still enjoy. It's why I push back a lot when people say, why are you so critical of a movie made for kids? You're not the target audience. It's not made for you. No, it may not be made specifically for me, but that doesn't mean that it has to exclude anyone over 10 years old entirely. Maya Kealoha puts in a charismatic, cute kid performance that I think works for Lilo in the film, And I thought that the comic relief duo of Zach Galifianakis and Billy Magnussen worked well, with Magnussen in particular flexing his comedy muscles. Sydney Elizabeth Agudong and Amy Hill also provide emotional support for the human element of the story, and there are plenty of hijinks and comedy beats to keep younger audiences entertained. The vast majority of Disney's live-action remakes just haven't worked, even when you remove comparisons to the original, and this movie I think does work, which by default puts it in the upper tier of Disney's live-action remakes, although the idea in general I'm still not a big fan of. But when we talk about family entertainment, I think that this is a perfectly pleasant movie. It's far from the bottom of the barrel that we've seen from other films and other franchises, and when we look at this on my personal rating scale, I'm going to give Lilo and Stitch, and it's good. Hardcore fans will likely have both more love and more criticisms than I do, but as always, I can only judge it from where I am in the world.
Say hello.
Hello.
Dogs no can talk.
Dogs can't talk, Lilo.
Ruff, ruff.
Now let's move to another movie on the complete opposite end of the spectrum. It's the latest release from A24, and it's called Friendship, which stars Tim Robinson as an oddball, naturally, who finds himself in an intense friendship and then rivalry with his new neighbor Austin, played by Paul Rudd. Friendship is the feature debut of writer-director Andrew DeYoung, but he has a long history of work in TV comedies. Shockingly, though, one of those comedies is not Tim Robinson's show I Think You Should Leave. However, it was obvious that this movie was written with Robinson in mind, because I don't think it's physically possible for anybody else to play Robinson's part except for Tim Robinson. Every studio or distributor has to sell their movie as best they can, so it's not surprising that A24 used a pull quote from GQ on the poster for Friendship, saying that it is the funniest thing I've ever seen in my life. That kind of quote is a marketing department's dream, although I have to say that I looked up that review, and the reviewer actually said that one of the sequences in Friendship was one of the funniest things that they had ever seen. I have to agree the sequence they were referring to is very funny, at least I think so, but you can't blame marketing for being marketing. However, the frequency that this movie is on is not the same as your typical studio comedy or even your typical movie comedy. You have to like very specific types of humor for this movie to really hit, and a lot of that humor lies outside the mainstream. I actually envy the stories that I've read of people in packed theaters watching this movie with roars of laughter cascading along the rows. I saw this movie in my local theater with about 10 other people, and I think out of those 10 people, there were 2 people that were laughing. One of them was somebody a couple rows ahead of me, and the other one was me. Tim Robinson is a comedian in the vein of Andy Kaufman. He has an idea of humor and a clarity of vision that is singular and uncompromising. His style is what it is, and he has no interest in changing it to make you more comfortable. And Friendship is built nearly entirely around that sensibility. Now, luckily, I do find Tim Robinson funny, but there are going to be a lot of people that don't, and they're going to walk out of this movie furious saying, well, what was all the fuss about? That wasn't even close to the funniest thing that I've ever seen in my life. So if you're not sure whether or not you want to go see Friendship, I would advise you to go find Tim Robinson's show, I Think You Should Leave, which is streaming on Netflix. You can also find clips online, and watch 5 to 10 minutes of it. If you think that what you're seeing is funny, then you'll probably think that Friendship is funny. If you're intrigued or confused by it, then I think you should give Friendship a shot. But if you don't think it's funny, if you think it's anti-comedy, as some people do, then you are not going to enjoy Friendship, and you should probably save your time and money. Now, this movie isn't just one long sketch, but it does rely heavily on cringe humor, and the secondhand embarrassment runs strong in this one. Robinson's character Craig is a socially awkward, obsessive, completely unself-aware family man who can't see that his wife, played by Kate Mara, can't really stand him anymore, nor can he understand why his new friend Austin begins to wonder whether he should really be hanging out with this guy. This isn't a straightforward comedy. It often takes surrealistic turns as we dive deeper and deeper into Craig's warped mind, and he isn't so much the protagonist of this film as he is the subject of it. And we spend 100 minutes locked inside the glass dome of his brain, looking at the world through his eyes. Paul Rudd is largely the straight man here, but that doesn't mean he isn't funny. Austin is a local weatherman and the definition of middle-aged cool. He's everything that Craig wants to be, which makes his flailing even funnier and more pathetic. There are shades of the cable guy in Tim Robinson's character here, but he is so off the edge that he makes Jim Carrey look relatively sane in comparison. Friendship isn't a home run, and it does feel at times like it's spinning its wheels, but I was on board for wherever the hell this movie was going to take me. I mean, by the time that Tim Robinson showed up on Paul Rudd's front porch with a new drum set and Paul Rudd came outside in full Ren Fair gear, I was signed up. I always stress that my ratings and every critic's ratings are subjective, but I have to stress that even more right now. I found this movie very funny because I find Tim Robinson and that kind of humor very funny, but your mileage may drastically vary. On my personal rating scale, I'm giving this movie and it's good, but this is not a safe comedy, which I think is a good thing because there are plenty of safe, middle of the road movies out there, including the first one I talked about in this review. In order for art and film to thrive and survive, you sometimes have to make room for the crazy. And those are my thoughts on Lilo and Stitch and Friendship. Are you heading out to see one or both of them? Have you already seen them? Let me know down in the comments below and stay tuned right here through the weekend because I've got more videos coming out. Thanks so much for watching this double review. If you liked what you've seen, be sure to hit that subscribe button, hit the bell so you know when I'm posting a new video. But most of all, thank you for watching this video. Until next time, stay safe and I'll see you then. Bye.